Hi everyone, this is Helen and welcome to Modern Pepper. So there are many things that I love about the summer, and one of them is having barbecue parties at home with your family and friends. So one of my favorite dishes to make for barbecue parties is pork ribs. And the recipe that I'm sharing with you today is a super easy recipe. We're gonna make a dry rub to put on our pork ribs, and you do not need to have an outdoor grill to make delicious, fall off the bone pork ribs. It is going to be so delicious, and people will be surprised that you actually made them in the oven. We're going to make a couple different sauces. So one would be using your favorite bottle of barbecue sauce that we're going to add at the very end of cooking our ribs. And then the other is gochujang glaze that we're gonna make together. And gochujang, yes, is a Korean red pepper paste. And that glaze is just so delicious, and it will take your barbecue ribs to another dimension. And your guests will ask, what is this? Because they probably have never had gochujang glaze on dry rub pork ribs. So it's gonna be super delicious. And of course, if you're a purist, you would never ever put any sauces on your ribs. I mean, you may have it on the side. So this recipe is also ideal if you're a purist when it comes to barbecue pork ribs, because you could just enjoy it as is with just the dry rub. So let's get started. So we're gonna make our simple dry rub. Before we begin, I just wanna kindly ask you to please subscribe to my channel and also share this video with anyone that might be interested in making ribs at home. And if you know of a friend or a spouse that should perhaps help you out when you're putting together a barbecue party, perhaps they could make this dish so that you're not doing everything for the party, right? So sharing is caring, and helping out to host your barbecue party is super, super, nice if your spouse or if your roommates or such could help you out, right? I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel by clicking on that subscribe button that's below. And if you enjoy this video, I would greatly appreciate a thumbs up. Please do click on that thumbs up icon that is below the description box. So let's get started. So this is a cup of brown sugar, and I have a plate full of all these seasonings. Now, you can go to my website at modernpepper.com. I will list all the ingredients in detail along with the cooking instructions. So for now, just sit back and relax and watch this video with me, okay? For our dry rub, I have a cup of dark brown sugar, half a cup of kosher salt, half a cup of sweet paprika, a quarter cup of garlic powder, 1/8 of a cup of onion powder, and I have 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, 1 tablespoon of dried rosemary, and a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, and a teaspoon of celery salt. And then we're gonna combine all this into our mixing bowl like so. In goes the spices. And then you just mix it up. This recipe is enough to coat 2 racks of pork ribs, and there'll be some left over. And what I like to do with my leftover dry rub is I double, triple wrap them in plastic saran wrap, and then I put them away in the freezer, and I take it out when I need it next for grilling some fish. I also use it to roast chicken, and then shrimp, and of course to make pulled pork, and of course to make briskets too. So this is a dry rub that I love using for all different kinds of grilling and baking. So I hope you try this at home and use it for your next barbecue party. So just mix well so that all the spices are incorporated nicely. So now that we're done mixing, it is also very, very important to taste it. You want it so that it's slightly salty and slightly sweet, and then all the other spices are just sort of a nice addition to the basic seasoning for our dry rub. So I'm just gonna have a small taste. It's salty, but then it's also sweet at the same time. If you want to make it sweeter, add more sugar. And that's it. So I would usually split this in half and leave the first half as is, non-spicy. And then the second half, I would add some Korean red pepper flakes or cayenne pepper. And as you know, cayenne pepper is super spicy, so be mindful of how much you're gonna put in there. But I also like to add Korean red pepper flakes because it is spicy, but it is not as spicy and sharp tasting of that heat that you would get from cayenne pepper. So Korean red pepper flakes is a really nice subtle way to add that sweet spicy taste, and I don't mean sweet in like a sugary way, but it's a spicy taste that is a bit subtle and not as sharp as cayenne pepper, but yet it does give you enough heat for you to notice. So I would add this if you want to make your dry rub a little bit spicy. Okay, now before we get started on putting our dry rub on our ribs, you need to have a baking sheet, and a baking sheet that's wide enough to fit the width of your ribs. And if it's a little bit smaller than that, it's fine. And then you want a long sheet. I know this is super long. You want the foil to be double the width of your rib because we're gonna wrap them up together. So I highly recommend using heavy duty aluminum foil. If you don't have that, make sure to use 2 layers of aluminum foil because we do want to make sure that our ribs are nicely encased in our aluminum foil when we put in the oven, okay? Now here's a rack of pork ribs. I am using St. Louis cut. You could certainly use baby back ribs. If you use baby back ribs, the cooking time will be far less. You could buy your pork ribs at your local sort of warehouse places like Costco or Smart and Final. And usually it comes in a packet of 2. So I usually make it so that I have leftovers so I could have it for lunch or dinner another day for my family. If I'm gonna cook this, I might as well make it a little extra so that it saves me from having to make another meal later on in the week. Before we get started on putting our dry rub, you have to turn it over and you'll notice that there is this membrane behind where the rib bones are, where it's flat, and we need to remove this. Now, if you don't think you'll enjoy removing this, then I would highly ask your butcher to remove the membrane behind the ribs. But you could do this at home, it's not hard at all. All you need is a paper towel or maybe a kitchen towel and a butter knife. And all you have to do is sort of go at an angle and try to just go under it. And you just want to lift a little bit of the membrane so we could have an easy pull like that. You just gently pull it up to the corner, and then once you have the little flap, then you take your paper towel or kitchen towel and then you hold it and then you kind of just peel it back slowly. And sometimes it'll come off in one big piece and sometimes you'll just have to pull it little by little. There we go. So here's our membrane piece that we just took off. We're going to discard that. And there's still a little bit of more membrane here. So just use the butter knife to get it started, and we're just gonna peel it back. And continue doing so until all the membrane is completely removed. Now, some of you are saying, oh, do I really have to do that? You do, because if you don't, your ribs will cook nicely, but you'll end up having this like rubbery coating on your ribs, and you don't really want to eat that. And plus, if you keep the membrane here, your dry rub won't be able to sort of adhere to the meat, and you want the meat seasoned on both sides, especially where the ribs are too. So you want to make sure to remove the membrane, and we're done. So it looks like this. The membrane shiny skin over it is gone, and we're ready to put our dry rubs on it. Now, I always like to cook with these disposable kitchen gloves, and I will have links to purchase this on Amazon. If you look under my description box below, I'll have links for that, as well as on my website at modernpepper.com. And all of the ingredients that we're using today, I will have links for you to purchase them on Amazon.com. Just make sure to check out the description box below, or go to my website at modernpepper.com, and I'll have a separate blog for this recipe where I'll list all the ingredients and kitchen gadgets that you may need to make this recipe, okay? That's modernpepper.com. So now that our ribs are ready, you just want to lightly dust your ribs with the dry rub that we just made. Hardest part of making this recipe is literally taking the membrane off and putting the dry rub on, because after this, we're just gonna put in the oven and it will literally cook itself. One of the important things to keep in mind when you're putting the dry rub on is to massage it. Make sure the seasoning is nicely kind of touching the flesh of the meat so it seasons well. You'll also notice that on the back of the ribs there's usually flops unless you're buying baby back ribs, and just make sure you move the pieces of fat or flop around so you could put the seasoning behind it. And any additional fat you see, you don't need to trim it off, because by the time we're done baking the ribs in the oven, all the fat will have rendered. And we do want some fat on our ribs because that adds a lot of additional taste, and also we need the fat to sort of keep our meat nice and moist. So if you see additional fat hanging out here and there, do not trim it, just leave it as is. So just continue putting the dry rub everywhere. Make sure you get in between the little flaps of fat, and you don't want to overcoat the meat with the dry rub either. You want to do it so that the meat and the seasoning are kind of intact, and then if you kind of lift it up and shake it up, there shouldn't be any seasoning that's falling off the meat. And then we're gonna do the other side. So we're gonna turn it over and do the rest. So after you put the dry rub on the rib, make sure to keep it in the refrigerator covered in this foil for 12 hours or overnight. So if you're in a pinch, I would recommend the dry rub rest on the meat for at least 2 to 3 hours in the refrigerator. What I would also do is take your ribs, roll it up, and then put it in a Ziploc bag, and it should fit right in here. And then you can store it that way in the refrigerator. So we're gonna take our flap of aluminum foil, and we're just gonna fold each side half and half again, and let that sort of hang at the edge of the baking sheet. So just fold it like so that the extra foil on the side is just nicely folded here, because later we're gonna unroll this and then seal it all together. So make sure your oven is preheated at 350, and we're gonna put our ribs in the oven at 350 for 30 minutes because we just want to make sure we get a little bit of a crust action with that high heat. And then we're going to turn it down to 250 and cook it for 3 hours. And then we're almost there. So our ribs have been in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes just to get the meat heated. And we're gonna now add 2 bay leaves just on top like so. And we're just gonna fold one side down like so. Just press it lightly. We don't need to firmly pack it down. And then press the other side just lightly, and then just curl the ends in. And you don't have to seal it really tight either. So we're gonna put the ribs in the oven at 250 degrees for 3 hours. Do not touch the oven, just let it hang out, because the ribs will cook and base itself in its own juices and fat, so you don't need to add any additional liquids. See you in a little while. Go get your nails done or put in 2 loads of laundry for 3 hours. So for 3 hours, you could just stay in your house, and then it'll just perfume the house, and it's gonna smell so delicious. So when your guests come, they're gonna be like, wow, it smells so good in here. What are you making? And you say, well, I'm making ribs. Anyway. So while the ribs are cooking in the oven, we're gonna make a gochujang glaze. And gochujang is a Korean red pepper paste, and it usually comes in a packaging like this. It comes in a smaller size to this size and much bigger size. And you can find this at any Korean grocery store. You could also purchase on Amazon.com. I will also have links to that on the description box below or at my website at modernpepper.com. So you could conveniently have this shipped to your house without having to drive to a Korean supermarket, okay? So we're gonna get started on making our gochujang glaze. So we have 1 tablespoon of Korean red pepper paste, 2 tablespoons of water, 1 tablespoon of brown rice vinegar, but any mild vinegar will do, 2 tablespoons of honey. I usually like to cook with honey instead of sugar, and that's usually the case for most of my recipes. If you want to use sugar instead, please do so, but I like the texture of honey better, and also, you know, honey is a bit better for you than having pure sugar. A half teaspoon of garlic powder. And then we're just gonna mix all this together. So we finished mixing our gochujang glaze, and you'll notice that the glaze is very runny, and that's what we want, so that it seeps into the meat of the ribs. And we're gonna taste it. You should always taste what you make. I'm gonna have a quick taste. It's good. It's spicy, but it has a little bit of vinegary taste, and it has that garlicky taste, and it has that sweet, subtle taste from the honey that we've added here. And then we're just gonna add a little bit of scallions in here. And you know, this glaze, you can make it days in advance. Just keep it in the refrigerator before you use it. So in addition to glazing the ribs with our gochujang glaze, I also like to make other sauces to have with the ribs. So this is my favorite bottled barbecue sauce. So pick your favorite bottle of barbecue sauce. This is the gochujang glaze that we just made earlier. And I'm just combining equal parts together. Then it just adds that smoky and yummy taste from the barbecue sauce, and then you're adding that Korean gochujang glaze, and together it is so good. I mean, I wish you could see this. It smells so good. You could smell all the smoky and sort of vinegary taste from the barbecue sauce, and then the gochujang glaze that we made earlier. Sorry, I'm drooling in my own mouth as I'm speaking to you. This just smells so good. So let's have a quick taste. That's good. It's good. It has that heat from the gochujang glaze that we made earlier, and then the barbecue sauce tastes so good with it. This is gonna be so good on the ribs that we're making. Yum. So our ribs have been in the oven at 250 degrees for 3 hours, nicely sealed. And we're just gonna unwrap it and take a peek. Look at that. So the ribs have shrunk about 20%, and that's normal, but so our ribs are super tender. It's almost like falling off the bones. So we're gonna dress our ribs with the sauces that we made. This is half barbecue and half of the gochujang glaze, and we're just gonna put it on one side. I usually make 2 racks of ribs, so you could do 1 rack with this barbecue sauce mixed with the gochujang glaze. But for our video today, we're just gonna use 1 rack and do half of the rack in this barbecue sauce and gochujang glaze mixture. And then the other half of the rack, we're gonna use the gochujang glaze, and we're just gonna put it on top like this. Oh, it smells so good. I just wanna eat it now. I don't even wanna put it back in the oven, but it will taste better if you put it back in the oven. So as I mentioned earlier, it is okay that the gochujang glaze is a bit runny, because we just want the glaze to kind of seep into the meat of the pork. You know, you're wondering, how am I gonna know which side is which side for the 2 sauces that we're using? If you need a marker, you could take any vegetable and just kind of put it exactly where 2 different sauces are. And then we're gonna put this back in the oven for another 20 minutes to 30 minutes, because we just wanna make sure our glaze and sauce is kind of nicely kind of getting thick and ooey and gooey and sticking to the meat of the ribs. I know I'm having trouble speaking to you right now because this smells so incredible. So we're gonna transfer the ribs to a baking sheet on top of a rack, okay? And I'm putting on my special barbecue gloves. These are great for handling hot meat. And I will have links for this on my description box below, and also on my blog at modernpepper.com. But these are great. Like, you could literally burn your hands handling hot foods. So it's very, very important to be very cautious. And you know what? The best part of these gloves is you could throw them in the dishwasher. Isn't that great? Anyway, I'm gonna pick up our ribs carefully, and I'm just gonna place it on the rack so that the back of the ribs, where it has been braising in its own juices and fat, has a chance to sort of drip and kind of air out and get a little bit dry for us to eat. We definitely don't wanna pick up ribs and have oil dripping down from our ribs. So make sure to take your cooked ribs, transfer it to a baking sheet with a rack. So we're gonna put this back for about a good 20 minutes in the oven, and it will be ready to be eaten by then. See you soon. Hi everyone, so it's time to taste. This is our smoky barbecue sauce with some gochujang glaze that we added, and this is our gochujang glaze ribs. They're both literally falling off the bones, and it's so delicious that I'm drooling right now. And James, hi. So James is gonna taste with us. So you wanna try the first one, James?
Sure.
Because this is really hot. I just cut it up. So take a bite. What do you think? I'm gonna have a bite too.
It's spicy and sweet. It's really juicy. It tastes amazing.
So I just had a bite. The meat is so tender. It's like pillowy in your mouth. And the seasoning, you could just taste it in every bite that you take. And the barbecue sauce that we added earlier with the gochujang, it just adds that nice smoky barbecue taste, but it's not overly sweet because we added the gochujang glaze to the sauce. This is super good. You want another bite?
Sure.
I wish I could give you a bite. I really do, but I can't. So make sure to make this at home. And then we're gonna try the gochujang glaze one, where this does not have the sweet barbecue sauce. This is just dry rub with some gochujang glaze that we made earlier. So you wanna have a bite? It just like falls off the bone. Look, it's like a perfect bite. What do you think? Is it spicy?
It's spicy, not too spicy for me.
Uh-huh.
It's really good. It's juicy, and I don't know, it's so good.
Well, which one do you like better? The one with the barbecue sauce and gochujang, or just the gochujang glaze?
It's a tough question.
It's a tough decision. Then I guess you'll just have to eat both, huh? So I'm gonna have a bite of the gochujang glazed ribs. It's just so tender right now. Oh, it's so yummy. I think I like this one better because this is a little bit less sweeter than the barbecue sauce that we added earlier to this one. I mean, they're both so good.
I've made my decision.
Yeah?
You know how we kids like sweet, so I'm going with that one.
Yeah, so it's a perfect combination. The kids could have this, the grown-ups could have this, or they could have both. Now, you could also turn these ribs into pulled pork sandwiches. So if you have excess, just pull off all the meat, shred it with your hands, and get those little mini buns, and then you could just serve it that way. So what do we want to say to everyone?
Thank you for
watching
this video.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you try this at home and have an awesome summer barbecue party with your friends and family. And I'm pretty sure that all your friends and family will be so impressed with how delicious these ribs are. And you can make this in your oven without even turning on the outdoor grill. And perhaps some of you may not even have an outdoor grill. So you could still have a wonderful barbecue party in your house without a grill. Now, for those of you who want to grill this, make sure to please check out my website at modernpepper.com, where in addition to having all the ingredients in detail with written instructions, I will also list instructions on how to make these ribs using your outdoor grill as well. Thank you again for watching, and I would greatly, greatly love it if you would click on that thumbs up icon. And also if you could share this video with anyone that might be hosting a barbecue party soon, or that just loves ribs and that needs a quick recipe. And lastly, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. So please do click on that subscribe button, and I would love to see you every Thursday, because Thursday is the day that I upload new videos. So until next time, happy eating and see you soon. Bye now. You ate all your ribs. He's gonna eat all the ribs before everyone else gets home, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.